All right, welcome to week one. So we're going to start by focusing in on hypertext markup language, or HTML, and see what that looks like. So if you could start up one of the code editors that you downloaded for this week, I'm going to fire up Visual Studio Code. You could launch if you want. You could use brackets, or you can use Atom. You can even use Dreamweaver or Visual Studio or Sublime or anything that you've got at your fingertips. It really doesn't matter. So first things first, we're going to start with a new file. And the very first thing we're going to create is something called a Doctype Declaration. So we start with a left angle bracket, an exclamation point. We type D-O-C-T-Y-P-E, Doctype, a single space, and HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So this simple tag, what we call it, it indicates that the type of document we're using is Hypertext Markup Language. It's a modern version, HTML5 or later, and this tells the browser ultimately, when the web browser reads this page, that it is an up-to-date standards-based markup document, and it will render properly on the page. So this needs to be the very first thing you start with. There should be no empty lines above it or comments or anything. So next things next, we're going to create a tag, an HTML tag. And the first one, of course, is called the HTML tag. And tags are generally typed in lowercase letters. They can be uppercase, but more commonly they're in lowercase, which is XML style syntax. And they have an angle bracket on either side of them for the start tag. And very often, and more often than not, each tag has a corresponding end tag. So we'll hit enter a couple times and create an end tag, and we know it's an end tag because we have a right-leaning slash in there and before the name of the tag. So this represents an end of HTML tag. So here's your start tag and your end tag. That's great. So we have our doc type, and then we get into the markup itself by creating what's called the root node, or the HTML tag. Within the HTML, there are two structures that are nested in between those two, the start and end tag. The first one will be the head section. So the head tag, and we close the head tag like so. And the head tag contains metadata. So it kind of like if you look at the beginning of a book, there's publisher's information, date of publication, publisher, author, that kind of thing. That's kind of what the head section inside the HTML elements is designed to contain. And then, of course, we have the body section. So we'll open and close the body tags. Both of these structures, generally speaking, are tabbed one tab stop in, so that I can look along the left margin of the document here and see that these are contained at a glance. We can see that they're contained inside the HTML element. So focusing now on the head section, I will tab, since I'm now going to put some other tags or structures inside the start and end tags for the head section. I'll hit tab again, and most code editors, when you hit the tab key, they'll either put a tab stop as you see here, or they'll have 2 or 4 spaces, or you won't see anything, depending on whether you have the your code editor shows those kind of hidden characters. So inside the head section, the first thing we want to do is we want to declare our character encoding. So many documents, the web is an international medium. So we may be using a lot of different characters, different glyphs from different languages all over the world. In order to support the rendering of those different characters, we need to tell the browser what the character encoding is. So we use something called a meta tag. Meta tags are for a number of different purposes, so they're kind of a generic tag. Inside the meta tag, we have something called an attribute, and the attribute kind of gives some more information about this specific tag. in this case, we need to define, we're going to use this meta tag to define the character set, or char set for short. So that is the attribute name. We have an equal sign. There's no space on either side of the equal sign. And then a quote. And inside the quote is the value of this attribute. In this case, the character set is UTF, which is Unicode 8-bit. And this is a kind of a character set that encapsulates most of the characters used by most of the world's languages, used by most of the people most of the time. So, and then the meta tag being a bit of a strange HTML tag in the sense that unlike the head tag or the body tag or the HTML tag, meta doesn't really have a start and an end tag. It's all it's all in one. So we have we put the end of character inside the start tag, and that's that. After the meta tag, but still inside the head section, we will have a title tag. And the title, in between those two characters, instead of putting another HTML tag, we're going to put some actual textual content now. We're going to put something, we're going to type the toaster. And you'll see why in a bit. With the code that I've had you download from earlier, you'll find there's an image of a toaster in there. So now we're going to build out a page to contain that and include some other text. So the title kind of gives the browser and to some degree the search engines and all kinds of and the other software that's consuming this content an idea about what is the purpose of this web app or web document for. What's the nature of the content. So other things go inside the head section, but we'll leave it for that. Leave it at that for now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to save this as an HTML file. Right now it's just an untitled document. So we're going to go into File, Save. And if you can put that inside the week-1 folder that I provided to you in week 1's lesson materials. And inside there, I want you to give this a very specific name. File names when we're building pieces or components for web applications or websites, they should be all lowercase. We'll call this page index, which is a very common name, often a reserved name for pages on web servers. Index, another common one is default, so on and so forth. And we're going to give it a file extension, which is .html, Hypertext Markup Language. So this is a static HTML template or page, and that is identified by that simple extension. So there are, of course, no spaces with page names or document names. We should stick to lowercase. You can include numbers. If you must have a space, as you can see with this week 1 folder, if you must have a space, use a dash instead of an underscore. So search engines understand those to be kind of word delimiters. Very often we don't want to do something like include an uppercase letter for index, right? Because some web servers are case sensitive, some are case insensitive. We'd rather sidestep the whole issue and just leave all of our file names lowercase, kind of like our tag names as well. So save that inside the week 1 folder, right beside the file silvertoaster.jpg. You'll notice your code editor, as soon as you do that, it understands the MIME type of the file, which is a type of document. It understands that the language that you're using is HTML, and it applies color coding. So that color coding is a feature of all good code editors, and it helps you to visually navigate the code much easier. So this is great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go inside the body and actually add a little bit of content. So we'll tab inside the body here. We'll add a paragraph element. The paragraph tag looks like this. We'll say that we're going to talk a little bit about the toaster here, which is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Okay. So here we have a paragraph tag. We've closed the paragraph tag, and notice when I type that, now that the code editor understands this is HTML, it will generate the end tag for me, and you can turn that off if you want in the settings. That's called code completion. Some people, they find that kind of a little bit irritating. But for now, for our learning purposes, and oftentimes just people leave that in place. So we have start tag and end tag and content. So now we're going to save this, file save. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to open this up in a web browser to see how the page renders this content. So let's head over here. I'm going to use Google Chrome. There are a number of browsers that I'd like you to download. They're listed here in this week's lesson folder for week 1. So download them all, as many as you can on your platform, and get used to them and get comfortable with them. They're free, and they're all terrific. They're full of jam-packed, full of great features, and even great developer tools. So now we're just opening up a simple page. We'll go to File, Open, File. You can also, if you don't have the file menu at the top, you can, on Windows, you can hit Control-O in Chrome, and that will give you the open file prompt, or Command-O in Mac, Control-O in Linux. So we'll browse here. We'll go to our week 1 folder where we put the index.html, and make sure your computer is set up in the file system to display the extensions for known file types. Otherwise, it'll just say index, and you won't know what kind of file this is, not easily anyway. So click on index.html. We'll open that up in the browser, and you'll note that all we see is the paragraph. So we don't see anything in the head section like the title. That's right. That's about right. That's the way it's supposed to work. The exception being the title is often used to render content in the tab. If you have a tabbed kind of browsing environment, that will render there. But this is anything. So anything that's in the body set of body tags will render in the page. So let's go ahead and we're going to build this out a little bit more here. Add a little bit more content to the page. Let's go back to our code editor, and now we're going to add a heading. So just before the paragraph element, but still inside the body tags, we're going to add a primary heading. And the tag for our primary heading is an H1, heading level 1. And we'll say the toaster. So add that into your code. So as soon as you save that change to the file, we head over to the browser again. You'll notice the browser, it's not constantly minding the file system for changes. So you'll see up in the address bar, which is typically reserved for web addresses, you'll see that in this time it's not www or HTTP or anything like that. We're in the file system for your machine, and we're actually viewing this file here in that location. So I have to actually force a refresh to reload the page. And then you'll see the H1, or the primary heading, is rendered, and it's by default, the default visual styles instruct the browser to render anything in an H1 tag larger and obviously bolder. And that makes sense. I mean, a primary heading should be larger than, say, a paragraph. So let's go back here. We're going to add one more thing. So after our H1, we'll create a new space here, and we're going to create an image. So we're going to incorporate an image into our page. Now, before we build the image tag or image element here after the H1 and before the paragraph, I'm going to go to our file system. And if you look at the week 1, inside the week 1 folder, you'll see we have a silver toaster. So with web applications, it's good to keep things neat and tidy and organized. We're going to create a folder for images. So there's different types of media for web applications. We're going to create a new folder, and to stay true to our conventions for naming files and folders, all lowercase, no spaces or any crazy characters like that. And so create an images folder, drag the toaster into that folder. So now what we're going to do is, because we can't just simply include an image inside the HTML. HTML is text. It's hypertext markup language. The image of the toaster it's a bitmap. It's a different type of file. So we have to reference that from our HTML document. So we're going to do that by building an image element in our page and then pointing that to or referring it to the picture inside the images folder from here. So let's see what that looks like. Move this out of the road here. So what we'll do is we'll create an image element, which is img. And just like the meta tag, this one has a one or more attributes. So the first attribute, after we type img, we add a space, and we type src, which stands for source. So the source of this image is equal to, and notice there's no spaces around the equal symbol, add the quotes, and then we have to type a file path. So from here, from this index, we go into the images folder, and we grab the silver-toaster. So you can see it better here. So from here, we go into images, and we grab silver-toaster.jpg. So with that handy, we can go here, type the path images / so that refers to the images folder, silver-toaster.jpg. There we go. And that's great. So there's one more required attribute on an image tag, and that is something called the alternative text, or alt for short. So alt is equal to, we'll say, a silver toaster. And the reason we do that is for accessibility. So let's just say that for whatever reason on this website the image fails to load, or the user has images turned off to speed up the performance of the website, or the person is consuming this using a screen reader rather than visually. And the alt attribute will be used to describe what this piece of content represents. Then, just like the meta tag, the image element is an empty element, so include the trailing / character and close with the right angle bracket. And now we have included an image element that refers to or references through the source attribute the picture of the toaster. So we'll save this, file save. We'll head over to the browser, reload the browser, and there we go. So that's great. So now we have the basics of HTML. We've included our doc type. We have the root container or node called the HTML. Inside that we have the head section. We have the body section. The head section contains the character encoding and the title of the document, and the body contains all of the content that is rendered on the page, in this case a primary heading, an image, and a simple paragraph. Terrific. So next up, we're going to take a look at how to add some visual styles using CSS.